Hello, my name is Brandon and I am your host for this series of tutorials for discoDSP's synth Corona. And in this video we're going to be going over the volume envelope in the Unison section. Since the Unison section is so small, I decided to combine them in this video. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go over what each little thing does for the technical terms, and then towards the other side of this video I'm going to let you listen to what those sound like when you use them, how it affects things. And so to start off with, let's start up with these top rows with the drop down boxes. What we have is the CNVX, CNVY, LIN, which is linear, and quad, and EXP. And they vary throughout here, so here's linear, quad, and EXP, and over here we have the same thing. But notice they're only above these knobs, because when you use them it changes how each of these knobs right here are going to be affected by it. Now let's bring up this chart and take a look at what they do. As you can see, this is the curve and what each curve adds to each knob. As you can see right here is the CNVX, which is this curve that makes it positive. It kind of stretches up to the Y side of the chart. And the CNVY, which is more towards the middle, but it still extends up to the Y side above linear. And then in the middle you have linear, which is a straight line from zero rising to the corner. And below linear we have quad, which is a larger curve, and EXP, which is an extremely large curve. And you can see the bend is almost a 90-degree angle, except for where the angle would actually meet, which is where the bend is. Let's get back to Corona. Now as you can see that you can change these. I'm using a preset sound, which is the same sound we used in the last video. And in case you missed that, it's program 33 from the factory bank. And since we already have these set, I'm not going to change them, but I am going to show you what each knob does. And attack is the speed in which a note reaches its maximum volume. Decay is the time taken for the subsequent rundown from the attack level to the designated sustain level. Sustain is the level during the main sequence of the sound's duration until the key is released. And release, time taken for the level to decay from the sustain level to 0 after the key is released. So you can see that each one of these is tied into each other. Basically, one knob alone can change how every other knob interacts with the sound. So I'm just going to play it so you know what the sound sounds like straight. If you're still using the patch from last week, you can right click, hit reload, and it'll reload the patch from new. So here's what it sounds like. And I'm going to adjust attack and let you hear what it sounds like, then I'll explain what it's doing. So if we go back to the technical term, it was the speed in which the note reaches its maximum volume. So obviously when it's at 0 milliseconds, it immediately comes in, but when it's all the way up, it takes a little bit to come in. So you can always find a midpoint there. Now decay, looking back at the technical term, was the time taken for the subsequent run from the attack level to the designated sustain level. So since we already have the sustain all the way up, I'm going to let you hear what the decay sounds like. So you can see that the attack is still fully there, but the decay is how much the note is kind of like, it's hanging in there, but it's not sustaining, because the sustain is what controls the sustain. It's a little bit confusing, but once we go to the sustain, you'll be able to tell the difference between decay and sustain. So let's adjust the sustain all the way off. You can see the note completely goes away. I'm going to take decay off, and there's nothing. So decay completely controls the note. Sustain is how long the note is going to hold out while you have the key pressed down. And as soon as you release it, it's going to go away, and that's where decay is going to take a little bit of more place. Now release is the final step to a sound being held out. Release very low, you can see that when we play it, the sound completely goes away, except for what we already have changed down in this area, which we'll go over later. So I'm going to bump the release up a little bit, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to press, and I'm going to let you know when I release, and so you can understand what's going on. Press, release. It's still playing out. Now we're going to come over to the Unison, and you can see the very top says octave. Basically what this does is when you click it, it's going to make your voices octaves rather than just multiplying the voices in one octave. So I'm going to play this with 2 voices and hit octaves. He's playing multiple voices. Now I can select all the way up to 4 voices. And you see it's a lot more full. That's what Unison does. It brings the sound out to multiple voices and makes it more full. Down here we have a slider which adjusts how full the sound is going to be. So all the way down here, this is where your sound is directly in the middle of your headset. As we move the slider over, it spreads the sound out through your stereo spectrum. Now the knob in the middle of the Unison section is the detune knob, which just sets voices pitch range spreading amount. So we're going to play this with it all the way down. We're going to bump it up a little bit. So you can see that the Unison is a little bit more involved in your sound design process on how full and wide you want your sound to be. So now that we've covered the top row of Corona, you can basically figure out how the basis of your sound is created and how you can start to edit that sound into the perfect sound that you're looking for.